There's a moment in the film when you kind of change the editorial style, when you intercut between two different scenes. The scene where he's with his fellow school teacher and he's cooking her pasta for dinner, and then you cut back to Dre, who's beginning to make herself up with that. The intercuts of those scenes were just really, really effective. I found them very, very powerful to give more of an insight into who they are as a character. What I found so interesting about the film was the way you developed the characters. To me, it seemed like you gave every single character there a history, a background, relationships. Even Frank, with the woman he's living with, who has, I think, maybe one or two lines in the whole film, everything there is full, and it feels to me totally complete, as you really have a real family there. And the same thing with Dan's parents. I mean, it was so interesting to me to see how fully developed those characters were. Had you originally done all the research that way in terms of developing the characters that way? I mean, the parents grew up in the 60s, I assume.
Right, right. No, definitely. I mean, that was always a part of who Dan is, you know, knowing that family sequence is a nice little detour at the end of the film where, you know, it's not a drug movie, but a lot of movies that have characters who are addicts tend to, in the third act, go a certain way. And we really wanted to, like, put on the brakes and learn a little bit, have little clues, little hints about where he came from. And you really get a sense of the activism, the activist spirit that they used to have, and now where they are now, and how they don't feel like they can really, they feel like what they did didn't really make a difference. And it's kind of the crossroads that Dan is at this point in his life, is can he make a difference, or is he going to go off in this other direction?
And it's an important part of our, at least for me as a writer, it's really important the conversations that we have about the characters and like what their backstory is. And even if an audience member would never ever be able to figure it out from what we have on screen, just like knowing that, so understanding where all their choices are coming from in the present, and we spend a lot of time talking about that kind of stuff, you know.
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah, it's something actually that comes up when we, in a new project that we're working on, where we're trying to get it made, and our potential financier will ask us questions about, well, why is this happening? And we'll be like, oh, well, this is happening because this, and this. It's not in the script, but we know the answers, right. And they're like, well, why isn't that in the script?
Why are you hiding it from us?
Yeah, you're hiding all this information that's fascinating. And so it's an interesting thing that we're always struggling with. How much information do we put into the script?
Or how much information you need to create the character in the script. Because I found that you had an entire history on every major character in that film. I mean, whether it be Frank, whether it be his parents, Dan's parents, whether it be even the relationship between Sharika and her mother and Mike in prison, and there's only one scene with Mike in prison there. But those choices I found so wonderful in terms of character development. Did you actually do that in the screenplay when you were writing it, or did that kind of come through conversations of who the characters are?
I think it started off with conversations about who the characters are, and actually in our process of writing Half Nelson, a couple scenes that reveal quite a bit to the audience in hopefully not too straightforward ways, but one where she visits Mike in prison, and another where Dan Dunn and his ex-girlfriend get together, played by Tina Holmes, on the park bench. And
Great
both
scene.
those scenes, you know, it was, we kind of had this whole idea about the backstory from just discussions between the two of us that hadn't been put in the script. And both of those scenes, it was, you know, we were pushed to, you know, just write, you know, write something to, if it's overwritten, you can pull back, but like try to tell us a little bit more. And it is always like, you know, he was saying, a struggle for us, because we try to withhold, I think, more information that we tend to underwrite rather than overwrite. And it's a really good exercise for us always when somebody says, just try it, write the scene, see what you can do with it, and if it's too much, you can cut it out, you know?
Always better to overwrite than underwrite. Yeah. So I had a feeling that the title, Half Nelson, and the emotional dynamics involved with that kind of an emotional struggle may have been part of the journey of getting the film made. Maybe you can share with us part of this journey, how long it took, what steps you took in order to get the film made to where you actually were on the set and the first day of production and you knew you could go ahead and had cast and crew and everything.
Yeah, it feels, we feel very lucky that we got this film made and it went so smoothly. It did take a while. You know, like I said, we started writing about 5 years ago, and we made the short film, Gowanus, and when we won the short film prize at Sundance that year, I remember being backstage after the award ceremony thinking, this is great, we're going to be able to make Half Nelson now. It's like automatic, right? And it just wasn't that easy. It didn't prove to be as easy as I would have wanted it to be. But, you know, we got an agent after making that short film, and he was really instrumental in helping us find the financing, getting the script out there. A lot of rejections from the typical indie financiers. But eventually it ended up in somebody's hands, Jamie Patrikoff, who ended up producing the film, and he got it out there to other people. And we have a lot of producers on the film, but they all brought something to the project.
Yes.
And so I guess and then we did the writer's lab, and then, I don't know, we were shooting 2005, summer '05.
So, and you finished the screenplay 2002, about?
Yeah, somewhere in there.
We finished a draft of it, but I think that the first draft that we were like, okay, we're ready to make this, was right before we made Gowanus in 2003. We're like, we're ready to make this, and of course we weren't. And the screenplay changed a lot after that, but that's when we felt like we want to make this right now, and that's why we said, well, if we can't make this right now, we're going to make something right now, and kind of like practice that craft or whatever. And so then we made Gowanus.
And Michael Arndt, when he was a guest on the show, shared that he wrote the script for Little Miss Sunshine in 2001, and it took him literally 4.5 years before he even had a producer and director committed, and then another year after that to really make the film. That's how long, I guess, the journey is from script to screen, so to speak.
Yeah, 5 years.
5 years, if we're lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
What is next on your agenda? You spoke about working on a film that a financier would ask you, well, what happens here?
Right. There's a couple projects that we've been writing over the past year. One of them is about a Dominican immigrant that comes to Iowa to play baseball, and it's sort of about his journey and where he ends up if he doesn't make it, you know. So it's not based on one specific person, but a common experience that a lot of people have.
Mm-hmm. And have you finished the script, or is it in the process of being written?
We're very close. I mean, we're still working. I mean, we'll keep working on it probably until it's done being
Right.
edited. But
Even in the editing room.
Yeah, we're going back to the script. No, but yeah. So we're still working on it, but it's close, I think, and we hope to, be making it this summer.
Great, that would be wonderful. You know, there were so many scenes in Half Nelson in your film that were so striking and stood out, so emotionally moving. One of them was the bathroom scene where Dre accidentally stumbles on Dan, who's doing his crack at that moment in time. What was it like staging the scene or writing the scene or going through and filming the scene?
Well, it changed a lot. You know, when we wrote it originally, it was scripted as a dialogue where she comes in, she discovers him, and he kind of pretends that he wasn't doing anything, but she's a wise kid, and she can tell that what's been happening. But in rehearsals, Ryan had the suggestion that we kind of strip out the dialogue a little bit and have it be more of a physical reaction that he's going through, and it was great. I mean, we kind of rehearsed it once and offset before we shot. And it was nice, and so we said, okay, this is great. And we didn't tell Sharika that we were going to do it. We said things are going to go a little bit differently than you expect. Just go with it and see what happens, see where it takes us. And so she was very nervous, and you could see that the performance she gives, she was really kind of freaked out because she had this friendship with Ryan that we had developed in pre-production during rehearsals, and to see him like that, I think, was really kind of traumatic for her. But it was good. It was really effective.
And in the rehearsals, you know, kind of to help her prepare for it, it was just more of like a game, you know. He's sick and you've got to take care of him. And we just like played that for a while. And but I don't think she knew exactly what was going to happen. And we really shot that part, I think, more than any other scene in the movie, like a documentary. And our cameraman
Very
was
long takes, you know, just him.
like half.
Him like on the floor, him on the toilet, you know, it was intense. And I think for a lot of people too, because we didn't tell our producers or the crew what we were going to be doing either. So after the first take of it, I remember our producer comes in and is like, "Hey guys, that was interesting. You know, you want to let me know what's going on here?" And we said, it's great, it's brilliant, you know. And luckily he went along with it too.
And how did Ryan deal with that? Was he really able to go with it? And he made many suggestions about stripping it down and making a more emotional reaction, visual reaction, than verbal reaction.
Yeah, I mean, he was great. I mean, you can see it in the movie, and he did it take after take. I mean, the guy...
He never, like, got out of it, you know, between takes, he might go into another room, but he just, like, stayed in that space. And, you know, we always get excited when somebody makes a suggestion to strip something away, because that is, you know, the way that we really like to work, and we end up stripping a lot of stuff out in the script or in the editing room ourselves. So to work with an actor who doesn't want to add lots of dialogue, but just wants to kind of like strip away, that was really exciting. And it was amazing to cut, because it was all this very, you know, documentary footage, and just, you know, like an hour of it, maybe. I don't know if it was that much, but it was a lot of footage, and just being able to put it together in different ways, and there was no set idea that we had. It wasn't storyboarded, you know. It was, so the writing process really for that scene continued into the editing room.
And how many takes did you end up making?
You know, we'd probably do like 6 or 7 on each actor. So we'd be on Ryan, and they'd be long, you know, they'd go, I mean, it felt like 10 minutes. It probably wasn't that long, but it felt like it. And
he was doing different things each time. Like sometimes he would kind of stay on the toilet, and other times he'd like fall down and lean against the pole, and then he'd be like lying down on the floor for one of the takes. And you know, it all kind of looks like that's what happens in one motion, but those were all different takes that we ended up kind of putting together. And he was always, you know, as an actor, willing to try new things, and doesn't need to know exactly what he's going to do before he goes in there, and that was really exciting to work with.
And having made documentaries before, we were comfortable and secure with the fact that we could cut it together, because we know we can cut in a doc style stuff that's like feels like it's all over the place. We can make it cohesive.
Yeah, it's a very, very powerful scene. There's another scene that was very powerful for me too, and that was when he finally gets together with Rachel and meets her on the park bench, and they talk about, you know, her first words out of her mouth, basically, "Are you still a rockhead?" And then you feel this kind of wanting to get back into this interdynamic between two human beings. And then he looks down and sees the ring on her finger. What kind of a shooting and writing experience did you have on that particular scene?
That day was kind of a mess, actually. It was like the second to last day of shooting. And we scouted that park location, like, when was it? Like on a Sunday morning. There was nobody there. It was a beautiful, like, quiet little park. And when we got there to shoot that day, there were kids running all over the place.
There was this fountain that was just spewing up like really loud water. We tried to like put sandbags over it, and the poor kids at the park who just wanted to like have fun on a beautiful day were like pulling the sandbags off to like get in the water again.
So it was kind of a chaotic mess, but fortunately the actors could focus in the middle of it all. And there's something interesting. The scene starts with him saying, you know, what does he say? He says, I can't say that sincerely. What is the line that
I wish I could say that sincerely.
Yeah, what does he say?
He says,
He's saying,
you're going to be great at it. I think you're going to be great
Yes.
at it.
Right,
They're
right.
talking about her going back to school.
and then
what
he kind of pulls out of the moment, but he's still in character. I mean, we didn't write that. That's Ryan Gosling saying, I didn't quite get that line right, you know, and Tina's great because she's like, well, say it again. And we just thought that was such like a nice little honest mistake that felt real, that like these two people would actually be talking in that way, like a little game they play. We're like, go ahead, try it again, you know, and we left it in the movie. It was a nice little accident.
But in terms of the writing process, that was one of the last scenes that we wrote for the film, and it really came out of, you know, earlier I was talking about how sometimes we underwrite, you know, we know all this backstory about our characters, and we just give like tiny little hints of it here and there, and somebody challenged us to write a scene where he gets together with her, and so it was really one of the last scenes that we wrote for the film, and it took a while for us to like get it right where we didn't feel like it was just that exposition scene giving backstory on him. And
Yeah, I mean, as much as we like it, we struggled with it in post and almost cut it out of the movie. So
Did you write the ring in there?
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay. So he knew what he was doing when he went down and just did such an extraordinary job at noticing the ring, and his whole, he leaps right out of that. And then, of course, you end that scene with him sitting alone in the darkness on the park bench with this very long shot that works so beautifully with that.
Yeah.
one of our
thanks.
producers joked like when we showed the cut, it was like, oh, and it was all a dream because it looked like the shot, but
It was in
no,
his head.
yeah, it wasn't really in his head. But that was one of the great things about working with those two actors, Tina Holmes and Ryan Gosling, was, you know, we had our whole own backstory for them and their relationship, and we talked a lot with Ryan about, you know, what his backstory was, just because he was the lead actor in the movie. But we didn't have any time to rehearse with Tina.
We wanted to, but she couldn't make it. So she came in like the day before we shot, but it was just great to see. Actually, it's the earlier scene where she visits him in school, and they're in the hallway, and we just started shooting right away, and it was like, wow, they brought so much history to it, and they created their own stuff, and I don't think they talked together about what it was, but you could tell they each created an entire backstory, and I was like, I'm not going to interfere. It's working, so whatever they came up with is fine with me.
And there's enough room in the scenes so that they wouldn't necessarily know from the words on the page exactly what had transpired between them in the past, but you know, there was enough there so that they were at least in the same headspace when they came together.
Yeah, it really showed. I mean, I felt that they were very familiar with each other. And what about working with the kids in the classroom? Now, you did the scene in the bathroom, kind of documentary, or I should say documentary style. Did you do the teaching scenes in the classroom that same way, or had you scripted that and just put the kids in there? And what was it like working with the kids in that environment in terms of shooting Ryan teaching the dialectics there?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely scripted, but the kids didn't know the whole script, and there were certain kids that had to feed certain lines to keep the scene moving. But for the most part, the kids didn't know the script, and they were just kind of working off of what Ryan was giving them. And so we would usually shoot, when he was giving a lecture of some kind, we'd shoot the kids first so that we'd get their genuine reactions to what he was doing.
But it was also kind of fun sometimes, because even if we were shooting them first, there was always like a third or fourth take on them too. So they had been listening to it, and they're not actors. They don't know they have to do it a million times, and they're getting bored, and it's hot. It's the summertime, and they're tired, and they're not getting paid enough, you know. So to watch them like slip into their kind of boredom and you know, sometimes there would be a kid sleeping, you know, one of the actors like really sleeping, and to catch that, because that's, you know, what teachers contend with in class all day long, and it made Ryan really stay on his feet, because if there was a kid falling asleep, he had to, you know, if it was a scene where he was trying to engage the kids, he had to try and really engage them.
In that first opening scene, when we see him at the opening of the film coming in, he writes the question, what is history, on the board, leans back against the desk, throws the eraser and misses it, and it says, "Ah." Was that scripted, or was that just an improv by him?
I think it's the sunglasses, right? Is it the chalk?
Right.
I think he comes in and he writes the thing, and he's sitting there and he's got the hangover, and yeah, we didn't script him to throw the glasses
No.
and react to it. No, that was him. There was a lot of that.
What was your most favorite scene in the film, or a scene that gave you the most difficulty?
And actually, it's the same scene. The scene where Ryan comes and confronts Anthony Mackie's character in the street to leave Dre alone. On the page, I mean, that's one of the few scenes that never changed throughout the years that we were writing the script. I think it was pretty much the same from the first draft to the last. I mean, maybe
a line or two,
little lines here and
but-
there, but so I always loved that scene on paper. And I was so excited to shoot it, and the location we had was great, and we'd scouted it, and the way the sun goes down in the background, I had all these ideas for how it was going to look, and we get there to do it, and it's totally cloudy that day. So it's like, okay, we'll do it. We'll compromise on that. But not just that. For some reason, we didn't rehearse it because I thought the spontaneity between the actors would just be like really great to not rehearse it. But I think that was a mistake because the actors were really not in sync that day, and I was not in sync because I was upset about the way it looked, and we were just all completely misfiring, and it was a really frustrating kind
And
of
I'm like,
bad day.
I'm trying to kind of rework the scene, while Ryan and is shooting another scene with Anthony and Sharika, which is the scene that we shoot earlier that day. I'm trying to like rework it and like make it all come together, and it's just not happening. And it was a messy day, so we ended up.
And then we go into the edit room. And what's the next day? I think we had the next day off, and so we go in there, and Anna tries to cut something together to see how we're going to make it work. And it wasn't the way we wanted it to be. And so fortunately, we got everyone together and said, look, I think we can all do this better. And we got everybody on the same page. The next time we did it, it was sunny. It looked the way we wanted it to be. And then at the end of that scene, we just had one of those great like movie magic accidents where, Ryan's cat had died earlier. The character's cat had died earlier in the movie. And at the end of that scene, a stray cat just kind of ran onto set, and he picked it up and tried to take it into to Frank's house. And he says, no, you can't bring that shit in my house. And the cat runs off, and our DP just pans off with it, and then we cut to Dre on her bike, and it just felt like thematically it was all perfect. Like we couldn't have written it any better than that.
It's just like a few scenes after Dan Dunn's cat dies, so he has this kind of connection with the cat, and it couldn't have been. Yeah, it was so surprised. I mean, it was just such a perfect accident. Some people didn't believe it. We had I think we had a screening with some writers, actually, and one of the writers did not believe that it hadn't been scripted, and they were like, why is the cat's name in the credits if it had been, it had to have been scripted because there's a cat's name in the credits, and we were like, that was the other cat. They wouldn't believe us.
And what I found so moving about the scene was not only the way Frank really embraced Dan when he came, but Dan asking himself the question, what is one man supposed to do? What am I supposed to do in this situation? Because on the one hand, Sharika could give in to be a drug runner for Frank, like her brother Mike, who is in prison for it, or she could choose the other way and go with Dan to try to make something of her life in terms of education. It was so powerful. That had been written from the beginning. That was like a clear climactic point for me in terms of him questioning himself about what he wants to do with his life. He doesn't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a odd thing for him to go through because it's like on one hand it's the courageous moment. It's his hero moment. I'm gonna go do this thing and save this kid, but he's also going to the last person he should be really hanging out with because he's an addict and that's his dealer, and the dealer has a strange kind of power over him. And they go into the house, but it seems like they're gonna be buddies, but really, I mean, he's going in there to get high, and we see how that plays out later when he goes over to the teacher's house. But yeah, I mean, it was just fun to watch that when they got it right.
And to me, that's the scene where he begins to go through this emotional arc of wanting to seeing himself as who he is and wanting to change to find out what he has to do to make his life work more effectively. After the scene with the parents, where they're drinking and dancing, and he's trying to make some kind of connection, achieve some kind of answer about what he doesn't even know the question is. And then we see his mother, or we see his empty room, and we hear his mother on the voicemail on the phone, and she's saying how great it was to see him. And he's then in the motel doing his drugs and his party, and that's where Sharika Epps comes, where Dre comes and gives him the drugs. That to me was really the kind of emotional turning point. Is that the way you had structured that, where it would be an emotional turning point? So at the end of the film, Dre comes back after making her choice of not being with Frank and being a runner, where she goes back to the motel to find out that he, of course, has been fired from school, and the two of them sit there. Is that change? Did you consciously try to evoke that emotional change in the screenplay, I guess is the question.
I think for her, definitely, that was like a really important turning point for her, because you see, you know, going back to the beginning, like you were saying, in the bathroom stall, you see her kind of forced into a situation where she has to help this guy and kind of take care of him. And then at the end, she's delivered these drugs to him and then just taken the money and walked out. And when she comes back to school next day and sees the substitute teacher there, she feels awful that she didn't help her friend when she felt like she could have. And like that's the moment for her where she decides that, you know what, I've got to go back and help my friend. And I think, you know, like you were saying, going back to that first scene where she has to help him in the beginning. And so, you know, that was definitely...
But she's also like affected by his teachings, you know. She's inspired by this idea that, you know, we can, as individuals, we can work together and make a difference on some level. And by his absence in the classroom, she feels that more than ever, and is inspired to try to make a difference.
Right, she's like, there's part of her, even though she knows that how could like Dan be at school tonight, there's part of her that's like hoping that her teacher is going to be there the next day, you know, and that it will all be okay, just like he was there the next day, you know, after she found him in the bathroom. She's hoping that she's going to find him there the next day, and his absence is like incredibly powerful for her.
And he reacts to that. So, and the next scene, of course, is the last end scene where he's getting his apartment straightened up, and he's putting a glass of water on the table, and Dre comes in, and he's shaved, and he has a clean shirt on, and they sit down together at each end of the couch, and they say nothing, but we know that there has a bridge between the two of them that I think is a very positive, optimistic ending for that film.
Yeah, thanks. Not everyone sees it that way. Some people think it's just depressing.
A downer.
Yeah,
and
it's interesting to get two different reactions.
Yeah, for me it was just, I was sharing with someone, we both saw the film about the same time, and I was saying, yeah, but look at that positive ending. I mean, he's changed, he's got a clean shirt on, he shaved his beard, you know, the apartment's clean. That to me is an evolutionary emotional change if I've ever seen one. And she was saying, huh? What?
I think it actually says a lot about the audience member, like how they perceive it, because we've had people come up to us at Q&As and be like, you know, it's so depressing. She's obviously going to go back and start dealing drugs again, and he's obviously going to like get on crack again, and he's going to die someplace in a motel room, probably from some bad crack that she's given him, you know? And I think it just says a lot more about the audience member than about the movie.
Yeah, and then someone else said, why did you have that fake happy ending on this movie? He should die. You needed to go all the way with it. But
it's
yeah.
great, isn't it? Listening to all the interpretations of the effect of the film on people.
Yeah, and it's nice. It's nice to end on that joke where, you know, he's still trying. He's trying to do something, and he never can't quite get it.
Right.
You know, and sort of the
kicking and screaming, he's
flaw.
going to change anyway.
Yeah.
And he's trying to give her something back, because she says, you know, she gave him the joke earlier, and he's like trying to give her something back, and maybe not very wow, but it's like it's in the effort, you know.
Right. And for those of you who don't know the joke, it's a knock-knock joke. Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Interrupting cow.
The interrupting.
Moo.
Did we ruin the end of the movie for her?
No,
Not
that to me,
yet,
I loved
yeah.
it. I thought it was so great because there was silence there, and he couldn't say it, but you knew that he was thinking of it, and finally he does it, and there's this little smile on her face that cracks into a laugh, saying, "That is so bad."
Yeah.
That was great. Well, I want to wish you a great deal of success with the film. You've already achieved success. I know that at the last Spirit Awards that the actors won, Ryan Gosling for Best Actor and Sharika Epps for Best Actress, and it's really a testament to you, to your film, to the screenplay, to your effort, to your perseverance. And if there's any one thing that I can share with anybody who's watching this particular show, that perseverance is everything. No matter what happens, it always is going to work out the way it's supposed to work out. That's our fade for today. Our guests have been Ryan Fleck and Anna Boden, filmmakers of Half Nelson.